The TrekWorks YouTube channel is sponsored by Tenant Controls, makers of lighting kits, soundboards, and more. Tenant Controls brings your models to life. And by HDA Model Works, suppliers of scale model lighting products, detail parts, and complete model kits. Visit HDAModelWorks.com today. Hello everybody, and welcome to part one of our classic Star Trek Doomsday Machine build series. I'm going to be building a little diorama here featuring the Doomsday Machine that you see in the picture, and then we're going to have a sort of a forced perspective view of the Constellation in the foreground, and then of course the Doomsday Machine in the background. And we're going to be doing lighting and everything on it, and I'm going to take you guys through what I've been working on so far and take you all the way through the end by the time we get through with our series here. This is a resin kit that's about 9 inches long. You can find this kit over at Federation Models under their miscellaneous models category. I think the kit's around $35 or $40. It's a wonderful little kit. It's really accurate to the original Doomsday Machine. I don't really care for the CGI version of it. I thought it looked kind of like, you know, worm-like or snake-like or whatever, and I didn't really like that version. I really prefer the original classic version. I was always fascinated by it. It's one of my favorite Star Trek villains, and it had a really incredible paint job on it, and that's what it's all about on this model, is getting the, you know, trying to replicate the paint job. And as you see when you look at, you can go online and look at pictures of the screen captures from the episode, and also there's a few rare photos out there of the actual filming miniature sitting on the stand in the studio when they're shooting it. And you can see it in some regular room lighting, and you can see that there's some really intricate detail and paint work that's on the prop. It's basically several layers of blue, and there's some, you know, highlights with, you know, different shades of blue and things like that. And so I did my best to try to replicate this. I started off with a base coat of like chrome silver, and then I sprayed another entire coat over the top of that with transparent Tamiya blue. And then I just took some regular medium to dark sea blue and just started hand painting on little blotches here and there, and just kind of built up the layers on it. And then I topped everything off with some iridescent blue from the Mackenzie iridescent paints in lacquer. And then I just went and hand painted on, just kind of using a dry brushing technique, all the raised details, you know, the little ribs and everything, the little vein looking things that are around this all over the place. And then I top coated it with some high gloss clear because I wanted it to look, you know, like it had a metallic sheen on it. It's supposed to be made out of neutronium, which is a, you know, incredibly hard substance. If you remember in the episode, you know, the phasers couldn't penetrate it on the starships. So that's what I came up with. I'll get you a little bit closer to it here, and kind of turn it in the light a little bit, and hopefully you guys can see the paint work on it. So we did all that, and then in the maw here we did that orange that you see on the interior of it, and I decided to go ahead and light this as well. So basically I mounted some LEDs inside the mouth. I took a piece of clear sprue and I just made a crossbar. You know, it's probably sitting back on the side profile. It's sitting back probably about this deep. So I glued in a little piece of clear sprue as a mounting point for my LEDs, and then I just basically took 3 flickering orange LEDs in 5mm and made sort of a triangle shape, and just mounted them on that piece of clear sprue. Just kind of hung them on there and glued them onto it. And then I took a couple of multi-color changing RGB type SMDs that I got from Jerry at HDA Model Works, and just kind of put those in there just to kind of break up the overall orange color and, you know, give it a little bit of activity going on in there. And then what I was originally planning on doing is I took some clear sheet styrene and I was trying to cut out a lens to put on top of this, and, you know, number one, to create the diffusion that I wanted, but number two, I had this idea about getting a decal made of the actual, you know, if you look in the front of this thing during the episode, it's got some really cool, almost like a kaleidoscope pattern going on in there. And so I thought I would take a screen grab of that activity, that, you know, that pattern when the thing is coming straight at you, and create a decal of that and lay it over the top. Well, in that process, I figured out that this area here is not entirely round. It's not perfectly round, and it's, you know, you can see from the side profile here, it's got a, you know, kind of a rough interior, which is the way it's supposed to have. So I couldn't get anything that would fit in there precisely without having some, you know, gaps around the edges and stuff like that. So after a little bit of brainstorming, I decided just to take and pour some clear resin into this. I just basically tipped it up on end and made about a little Dixie cup full of clear resin, and just poured it in there and let it sit overnight, and it hardened up, and this is what we came up with. Now, just before it hardened up completely, I took a little pick and I just went in there and I just started, you know, touching it all over on the top of that to give it a little bit of texture. And that, I didn't want it to dry completely smooth, you know, like the surface of water, because that wouldn't break up my lighting at all. It would make the lighting look like just 3 LEDs sitting in there, and I didn't want it to look like that. So I kind of roughed it up a little bit, and then I let it dry, and then I sprayed over the entire thing with a thin coat of Tamiya transparent orange. I did some shading around the edges here. I took some silver paint and went around that first, so it would kind of have a little bit of a reflective property. And so that's what I came up with. Now this is set up to run at 9 volts, so I have it plugged into my power supply. I'll go ahead and turn it on for you, and we'll just kind of slowly turn it here so you can see how the effect looks. So that's the maw, the open mouth of our Doomsday Machine. And you can see we got some color changing going on there, and we got some reflections going on. So now I had Jerry at HDA Model Works make me the decal that we're going to put over the top of this. And so when we, you know, and this light will kind of go through it, and we're going to have that effect going on in there, and that's going to help break up the light, you know, the lighting a little bit more. Unfortunately, the decal's not here yet, so this will be a multi-part little video build. But when we get the decal in here, we'll show that getting put on and show you how that looks afterwards. This looks really, really cool though, just the way it is. Especially my favorite view is kind of just like that, where it's kind of, you know, you can see the side of it and you can see the open mouth. The model also comes with this little base, which is nice. It's a solid piece of resin, so it's nice and heavy. This model is actually pretty heavy, so it's a nice counterweight for that, and it balances really well. I just use a small piece of 15-30 hollow brass tubing to mount the model. The model actually does come with a mounting rod, but it's not hollow. It's, you know, it's just for a static model, and with the lighting we had to get wire up through there, so I had to use a little piece of hollow tubing, and just drilled the base out a little bit bigger, drilled the hole out a little bit bigger in the model. I drilled straight up, and then I drilled straight over with a 3/8 drill bit, a little bit bigger, so I could get my wiring and everything in. And so that's what we've got, and everything's tied together. So then I just took and painted the planet surface here. It's got a lot of texture on it, and I remember that in all the original episodes before they did the CGI, they used to show this at the opening. There was this kind of really cool looking orange planet that you saw in a lot of the Star Trek episodes. So I went with the orange color. Then I just took a paper towel and made some different colors of paint. I did some green and some brown, and just dabbed it on there, kind of, you know, like a stippling effect, and it came out really nice. And I came back with some white at the very end to simulate some, you know, clouds and ice caps and stuff, and that looks really good. It's really goes along well with this this model here. So that's where we're at on the Doomsday Machine. Now what we're going to do is we're going to mount all this on a little pedestal. I'm going to get a little square or maybe rectangle shaped pedestal from Hobby Lobby made out of wood, paint it black. Maybe do some graphics on it that says the Doomsday Machine. I'm going to definitely put some sound in it. And this will sit on top. But what I also decided to do is I also decided to add the Constellation in here. I kind of thought of that at the last minute. And originally my plan was I was going to do it in 1/1000 scale, since the Polar Lights kit's currently out there. And it does come with the Constellation name and registry numbers if you'd want to build the Constellation instead of the Enterprise. And when I started looking at it, I realized that that was going to be too big. Even though we're talking about forced perspective where, you know, since they're not in scale, we have this sitting in the background and we have the other subject up in the foreground here, which can be, you know, slightly bigger scale, because you're given the illusion that what you're seeing here is big and then what's in the background might not be as big, but it actually might be really, really huge. So we came up with that idea, and after looking at the 1/1000 scale model, it was just too big. So what I did is I started thinking about it, and I had this old kit laying around. This is the AMT Erdl kit from way back in the day. You get these 3 ships. And these are 1/1600 scale. And this little Enterprise model that you get in this kit is actually not too bad of a model. It's very reminiscent of the original 1/650 scale AMT Enterprise, which is exactly what I wanted, because I wanted the model to look exactly like it did in the episode, which they did use an AMT Enterprise model kit, believe it or not. So I'll show you what I've come up with. We've got this little 1/1600 scale. Let me get the Doomsday Machine turned off and kind of out of the way here. We've got this wonderful little 1/1600 scale Enterprise, which I've done some quite a bit of work to make it look like the Doomsday Machine, or the Constellation. And so I did, you know, the battle damage on it. I cut out the little, you know, cookie bites out of the saucer, and I matched them up to the screen caps I have of the original episode. Again, not the CGI version, the original episode where they used the model. And then I mimicked the damage up here on the nacelles. I'll get this a little closer here for you so you can see we've got a lot going on inside there. I've got some pieces hanging out, I've got some debris inside there, and all that stuff. The nacelles are supposed to be slightly askew, as you can see. Pylons have been damaged. And of course our hits on the saucer and some, you know, secondary burn marks here and there. She took a real beating. I've got 2 tiny little holes drilled in each side here for the little lighting that's going to come through on this. We had Decker that was still alive on board in the auxiliary control room. The ship was at minimum power, so we're going to put a little fiber optics in there to simulate that. But the rest of the wiring you can see I've got here is for the lighting I'm doing on this. Now I'm going to go ahead and plug it in for you. This is going to actually operate on a miniature control board that I'll get from Ralph at Tenna Controls. See, we've got our positive and our ground here. Let's make sure we don't hook these up backwards. So we've got some special effects in the saucer area here. Get my ground pulled out. Wiring's kind of messy right now, but we'll get all that cleaned up. Get this turned on for you. So what you can see is what we have is we have inside the saucer, we have, let me see if I can zoom in on this for you a little bit. And hopefully this will show up. You can see inside the saucer we have some orange detail in there. I'm losing my lighting. Sorry about that, guys. There we go. You can see we have some orange detail in there that's going to simulate fires. Over here we have some blue detail that's going to simulate electrical shorts and things like that. And then the one in the back here, on this side, you can see a little bit more orange. Whoop, which way am I turning here? There we go. Hopefully you guys will be able to see that. I'll get some close-up shots of it here in a little bit. So the control board, basically what that's going to do is it's going to create a flickering effect that's going to simulate fire here, where we have the orange lighting coming through. And then in this one here, this little blue one, it's going to simulate, you know, a kind of on again, off again electrical short, you know. So that's going to look pretty neat, and it's going to add some animation here to our little constellation to go along with the Doomsday Machine. So the plan is going to be for it to sit kind of something like this, with the constellation in its, you know, format where it's tilted down. It's tilted down, and like it was in the episode with the Doomsday Machine behind it. Now, the Doomsday Machine also comes with a miniature, tiny, I'll get that out and show it to you now, scale Enterprise. And it is super, super tiny, guys, as you can see here. So originally my idea was I was going to have it being drawn into the maw of the Doomsday Machine, and I was going to use a piece of fiber optic or something like that, and I didn't really like the idea because I didn't want to see anything holding the little Enterprise up. And so the idea that I came up with a little bit later was that we had the scene in the episode where the Enterprise was when Decker took over. He basically ordered the Enterprise to attack, and we had the scene where the Enterprise was flying over the Doomsday Machine trying to hit it with its phasers, and we saw that the phasers just basically bounced off and didn't do anything. So I took some wire. This upper part here is just regular solid core copper wire, and then the bottom is some really fine strands of wire that I just cut off in small little pieces, and I made sort of that blossom effect that you can see there of the phaser, you know, strike bouncing off of the hull of the Doomsday Machine. And so I have this where it can be mounted on the top of it. Let me go ahead and stick it on there really quick. I've just got a tiny little hole that's been drilled into the surface. And now you can see we have the Enterprise flying over and taking a shot at the Doomsday Machine. And you can see the, get a little closer to that. You can see the phaser hit bouncing off of the surface there. So that solved two problems. It gave a little bit more action to the display, and it solved the problem of, you know, what's holding the Enterprise up there. So it's our phaser beams that are holding it up. So there you go, guys. That's basically the plan. This is all going to be put together, and it's going to come out pretty cool when we're all done here. So what we're going to be doing now is I'm going to take and I'm going to pull all my wires through. I'm going to run new wire up through the mounting rod here and pull it out through the front. And then we're going to tie each one of these wires into what these individual lighting LEDs are inside the model, and I'm going to label these so I know what they are. Two of them will connect to my control board, and two of them are going to connect just to light up the little side port windows here on the hull, which can be constantly on. They can be hooked up to regular power. So we're going to do that, and then our wiring will be completed, and once we get the base and everything, we can just mount everything on there and tie it all together. And I am going to be using a soundboard on this, so when we get to that point, I'll show you how I set that up. Now, this model right now is not complete. I ordered a set of decals from JT Graphics. I was really surprised to find out that JT Graphics had a complete set of decals for this odd-scaled Enterprise. And they're super detailed. They actually had the Constellation name, and it has all the same markings on it, including all the windows that you get on the 1/350 scale Enterprise. So the registry number, the names, all that, the little markings that go on the saucer, on the bottom of the saucer, on the belly, you know, pretty much everything. So it's really going to make this look a lot nicer once we get all that put on there. And but yet it's still going to look like the AMT, the original AMT, with the incorrect shape of the BC deck and, you know, that classic look, because that, like I said, that's exactly what they used on the episode, just shrunken down. So this is going to be pretty neat. Okay, so let me get the camera repositioned here, and I'm going to come back and we're going to start running some wires up through this and get that all taken care of. Be right back, everybody. Okay, we're back here again with you, and we're going to be setting up the wiring on our little Constellation model now. So I've got some of my 30 gauge wrapping wire here. I'm going to start clipping off sections of wire, and I'm going to run it up through the our little mounting rod here, and once I get it up inside the model, I'll reach in with a pair of tweezers here and grab it and pull it out of there. We're going to bring it out far enough where we can have excess wire, and we can connect it up to our wiring here that's coming off of the internal part of the model. Get it all terminated, then we'll tuck everything inside the hull, and then we can wrap it up by gluing on our little forward deflector area and seal it all up. So I'm going to push a wire up through here to begin with, just a single red wire for our positive. And if I can see it come through up in there, I'll grab it with my tweezers. Okay, got a little bit of wire there. And I'll just leave a little extra long length here to connect to whatever I do inside my base. And clip that off. Now we'll go with a black wire for our ground side. Do the same thing. Harder time seeing that black wire come up through there. Let's see, I see it right there. Okay, pull that at about the same length. And we'll make our cut here. Okay. So, you can see the method that I'm using to do this. I'm just sliding each one up and through. Now I'm going to disconnect all my wiring here. I had it all bundled together basically so it all would light up. So now I've got to get these broken down into individuals to make sure that we have separate control over the different things that we want to do. We'll have some outputs on the little control board from Tenna Controls, and they have to be hooked up individually for each output. One that's going to operate our little blue light there that I talked about for the electrical short effect, and the other one for the fire effect. So what we have inside the models, we have a blue SMD and an orange SMD, an 0805 SMD that are in there, and so they have to be separated. So I'm just disconnecting all the wires here, and I'm going to take my power supply now and we're going to isolate and figure out which wires are which. I've also got two SMDs in there, which I know are the white SMDs that are in the hull here to light up that little auxiliary control room area, and I know that those were these red wires, so I'm going to leave these two hooked together. They can go just directly to power once we connect the main power to the model, which will be 9 volts DC. Now I just have to figure out which two of these other wires are the grounds for the white lights. So I'm going to turn on my power supply, and I'm just going to pick out these ground wires here. I'll be glad when I get all this straightened out. It's turned into a nice little cluster here. Okay, we've got these thin wires here. You can tell your plus wires on these SMDs because they have the resistor built on. Okay, let's get this separated here. All right, I've got one little one little ground wire isolated here. I'm going to try and see what it lights. If it lights the white lighting, or if it doesn't light anything, I know it's not these two lights. Okay, it's not that one. Just a little process of elimination here. Okay, that's one of our white lights, so we know that that one's good. I'm just going to stick it down with a little piece of tape here so it doesn't get mixed back up. And we'll find our other one. Not that one. That one, so it's got to be I'm going to make sure this wire is bare enough here. It may not be making a connection. This could be the wire we're looking for. Best way to strip this SMD wire is just a little lighter like that. Just burn the insulation off. If you try to strip it or anything, it's so fine that you'll probably break the wire. There we go. That's what I thought. Okay, so that's our other ground wire for our main lighting for the hull. So I'm going to twist these two wires together. Okay, we're going to put a little piece of heat shrink tubing on our wire here. Okay, now we're going to twist these two wires together. It's really fine, delicate wire, so you gotta handle it with care here. It can be kind of tedious. Okay, we've got that one wrapped, so I'm just going to put a little dab of solder on there. Doesn't take a lot. And then that wire now is taken care of. We're going to slide our heat shrink tubing up over this. And get that sealed up. Okay. Now we'll do the same thing with our positive side here. Got these two wires here. These are a little bit easier because the wire on this They actually have the built-in resistors, and that wire coming off of there is pretty thick. Go ahead and get this one soldered. Soldering takes some practice if you're not used to it. As you can see, I just dabbed a tiny little bit on the tip and let it flow down the tip and right onto the wire here. You don't want to glob a lot of thick solder on there. It just takes a little practice. Okay, we've got that one on there. Now we're going to seal this one up. Okay, so now we have these two wires down here. I'm going to take a little piece of tape. We'll kind of twist them together here a little bit. And then I'll wrap my tape around this. And I'm just going to label this hull lights. Just like that. So that when we hook this up in the base, now we'll know exactly what that's for. Okay. Now we've got to move on here. Once we get this all in here, I'll pull this wire back down a little bit and then we'll slide everything inside the model. Okay, now we got this one, which I know is the orange wire for the, or it's for the orange light. And then this one here is also for the orange light. So I'm going to slide two more wires up in there. It's amazing how many wires you can get in, even in this really thin tubing with this small 30 gauge wire. Okay, I can see it just barely sticking up in there. Grab that and pull that through. Okay. Just repeating the process. We'll go ahead and cut it off. Leave about a foot, foot and a half. And then go with our black wire. That wire is much harder to see. It's getting a little bit more crowded in there. It's getting more difficult, but I'll get it. There it is. Almost got it. There we go. Okay. Pull that through. And same thing, we're going to leave about a foot and a half of wire here. All right, so now we're going to take our heat shrink again. These wires don't need to be quite this long, so I'm going to cut them off a little bit. Slide our heat shrink tubing over that. Connect our red wire. Okay, now we're going to come back and do this again, seal it up. And get ready to do our black wire. I can make this wire a little bit shorter. Like I said, it's too long. This wrapping wire with the vinyl coating on it, you can just strip it with your fingers like you're seeing me do there. Just make sure we get our heat shrink on there. Almost forgot that. Going along pretty fast here. We're just about done. Okay, seal this one up. All right, so that completes our second set of wires here. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to twist these together and take a little piece of tape and label it. Don't have to get real fancy with this stuff. Just use some, common sense. And I'm going to just put orange LED. All right, got that one. So we're down to the last one. Take another red wire here. This will look so much better when it's all cleaned up. Okay, I can see that one right there. Okay, so much easier to see that red wire. Okay, pull that through about so far. Cut off about 1.5 feet again. And now we'll go for our last wire here. Black wire. This one might be challenging. It's getting pretty crowded in there and it's going to be hard to see it. I see it, but it's going to be hard to get to. Wish me luck, guys. It's in the very back. There we go. Got it. All right. Okay, do the same thing again once more. Cut off our excess. And we're down to just these last 2 wires. Which we know that this little one here has got the resistor on it, so it's definitely the one we want, the plus side. one more little ground wire left here. And there it is. I'm gonna have to grab another piece of shrink tube. Get this little guy soldered and we'll be done, guys. All right. All right, and there we have it, everybody. We got all of our wires connected up. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through with my power supply and go down here to my ends, and I'm going to test every one of these to make sure that they all work. And then if we're good, I'm going to go ahead and seal it all up. I'm going to get all the wires pushed inside the model and get the end cap glued on there, and we'll go from there. So I'll come back and show you how it turned out in just a couple seconds, everybody. Be right back. All right, so we're back for the final segment on this video, and we had success, everyone. I finished terminating all the wires. I tested them all before I closed everything up, and everything was working just fine. So I've got the deflector dish mounted on here now, and put a little bit of putty around that and light sealed it. Did a little bit of paint work on it, just real basic weathering, some black on there to make it look burned and used up like it was on the prop model. So, but now I'm going to turn the power on for you and show you what we got. I'll turn this overhead light off so you can see a little bit better. But now you can see the orange inside our damaged area there. We got the blue going on there, and a little bit more orange back in this one. And then now you can see our little hull lights. Hopefully you can see those. Just a couple little strands of fiber optic I just pushed in the holes, glued them. And they're not supposed to be super bright. You know, the ship was on minimum power, and that's supposed to be the little auxiliary control room where Commodore Decker is hanging out. So there you have it, guys. So that's going to be a wrap for this video. We'll be back in part 2. We're going to be doing the decaling. When I get the decals in from JT Graphics, we'll show you all the decals going on in a little Constellation here. It'll really start looking nice when we do that, and then we're going to do the one on the front of the Doomsday Machine. And then we'll go on from there. We'll gather up everything we need to put the base together and get everything mounted in the base and get our sound working and all that, and we'll cover all that in the next video. Hope you'll tune in and see that. So we'll see you next time, everybody. Take care out there, and happy modeling, everyone.